What is up? That was really loud. I'm in the office
really
today,
loud.
and that's really like it's echoing in here, so it's kind of funny. But Chris Weiser here with Ryan O'Hara, our MSP in residence here at Figure MSP. What is up, my brother? How you doing?
Hanging in there, man. It's been a busy week this week, but
Yeah,
having a lot of
you
fun.
had a pretty crazy day because you're
Yeah.
dealing with MSP stuff, but then
Yep.
you're also dealing with child stuff.
Yep.
And, then you got your own issues, which we could go on
Yeah.
that
Yep. I
one
mean,
all
we
day,
could
right?
spend a whole nother hour on that.
Yeah. So if you guys weren't here with us, I'll go a little bit of a recap, kind of what we're doing. If you guys were not here with us last week, Ryan, what did we talk about last week?
So last week we talked about understanding the risk and the cybersecurity risk assessment stack. So over the course of this 4 weeks, we're kind of focusing in on the technical side of things. We've talked with Lindsay, had 4 weeks on marketing. We talked with Cindy Phillips. We had 4 weeks on sales. And then this is kind of our foray into the tech, the stuff that a lot of the people out in the Facebook group in particular are all interested in. But we started with the cybersecurity risk assessment stack because, within our program, that's our directive. All roads lead to the cybersecurity risk assessment. That is the first step that we do in moving towards ongoing service, because people can't make a decision on how they can move forward with their IT and cybersecurity decisions without knowing what their risk is.
Well, and we talk a lot. You guys that are watching this on all our channels that we're on right now, you probably have, I get a little polarizing because I talk about this all-inclusive seat price and the $300 per seat and above type thing. Understand how we get to those numbers is we diagnose before we can prescribe. And that's a very, very important scenario in today's MSP IT service provider world, that you have to look at the things that you are trying to potentially support. You have to assess them. So at that point you can bring them on and you can actually use what you find, not just the tech stuff. And I really want you to spend some time going back and looking at what Ryan and I talked about last week, because we're using what we find during the risk assessment. And it's not just a network assessment anymore, not your free network assessment. It's the cybersecurity risk assessment. We're starting with cyber first. We're gathering that risk and putting it in front of the prospect and saying, here's where it sits. You're going to get hacked. I can't stop it. We have things that we can do to help minimize, controlled recover, limit the blast radius. But our goal is to ultimately do those things to minimize, but to get your insurance claim paid when you have a bad day. So we're more in the risk management business now than we are we can stop all hacks business. Because I don't care who you are, you can't.
Right.
And it's a really important thing. So we're going to go through a couple different things today. If you guys are watching with us live, got a couple housekeeping items we're going to hit. If you're watching on the recordings, obviously it's there. We have a guest with us today, Stephen Talent. He's the CRO over at Highwire Networks, one of our partners that we work with. They are a fully managed SOC and all this other stuff. So we'll have them on, Stephen on in a minute here, and we'll talk through a couple different things. A couple housekeeping items that I have. First of all, if you are here live with us, we got our event that's coming up in just over a month and a half from now. That is in Nashville. You can register for that. We just announced our keynote speaker that's going to be there. In fact, this is brand new since last week.
Yeah.
Mr. Christopher Voss. I'm not sure if you've heard of him, but he is a former FBI hostage negotiator, wrote the book Never Split the Difference. It's a phenomenal book. Also has a documentary that's out on Netflix called Tactical Empathy. All about Chris Voss and everything. He's going to be speaking on day 2. This event is May. We have a pre-day on May 16th. Then 17th and 18th are our full 2 live days. Would love to have you. That is in downtown Nashville at the Margaritaville Hotel. So hopefully you guys can come there and see us with that. We also have a bunch of other things going on. So I'm going to bring Stephen in, Ryan. Anything you want to play around any of that or before we bring Stephen in?
Come to Nashville. I mean, that at the beginning of the year when I found out the tentative dates and the locations, that was the first one I circled. I mean, Nashville's going to be a lot of fun.
I'm excited about that. Nashville's a great time. I spent a lot of time there.
We had a ton of fun in Phoenix, so I can only imagine what Nashville.
Yeah, I love it. All right, so we got Stephen in the room. We'll share some slides in a minute. Good afternoon, Stephen. Actually, it's only 10:30 for you because you're on the West Coast. But good morning, sir. How you doing?
Good morning. Good to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you. I know Stephen was upset because he's like, "Oh, we don't have a green screen. I'm a green screen. There's no background. You got to see my house." Sorry,
this is a
mess. You're dealing with our
put all my guns away.
Hey, you know what I kind of figured out is through COVID, nobody cared anymore. Like right. It is like you're like whatever. It is what it is. Nobody even cares.
Whenever people apologize for kids in the background or animal noises, it's like it's kind of the norm now.
It is
Reality. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. Stephen, can you give us a little quick background on yourself and on Highwire Network so our viewers can see who you are, what we do?
Yeah, absolutely. So, spent about the last 20 plus years or so in the managed security services space, operating as an MSSP, and then about 9 years at Fortinet, supporting service provider partners. Kicked around a little bit with Endpoint and XDR. And now I'm stoked to be on board here at Highwire, helping our partners drive their MRR growth in security services.
Yeah, we're excited too. It's good to have you. I got a chance to meet you at our Phoenix event, so it's pretty cool to have you there. And I think you guys do well at our events and do well with our client base. And some things that we're going to talk about with the actual streamlining the stack is going to really involve some of the things that Stephen is doing. And so we're going to really welcome his feedback. And if any of you that are live with us want to ask a question, just put a comment in there. Make sure you authenticate with StreamYard if you want us to put your name on there. And a good example of this, I can show those on screen. You can see, I think Susanna, the CMO over at Highwire, put in there that you guys will be at our national event. So that's great. So thanks, Susanna. Okay, Ryan, I'm going to share your screen here. Let me get that up on screen and I'll let you take it away. And Stephen, if you have any interjections, feel free. I know this is your first time on with us. Ryan's going to talk about some of the different things that we're doing throughout our next couple weeks here. We got today and then 2 weeks left with Ryan and me, but feel free to interject as we go. Okay.
All right. So like we were mentioning last week, we talked about understanding your risk and the stack related to the cybersecurity risk assessment. Today, we're not going to be as tool specific. We're going to talk a little bit about the philosophy of your stack. So kind of the mindset around how you want to craft it. And then over the next couple of weeks, then we're going to get into more of the tool specific options. So some of the categories that you want to make sure are covered in your stack, and then some of the options and recommendations that we have as far as filling those categories. So it'll get a little bit more specific. Week 4, I think, is going to be the big one that everybody's interested in. Chris mentioned those $300 plus per seat posts tend to get controversial in the Facebook group, and that's a lot of times where it devolves into is well, what's in the stack? What's in the stack? And we're going to talk a little bit today, kind of about the stack and the reason why that's not just like an easy answer, because everybody has a little bit different stack. There's a lot of different ways that we can curate these things.
Well, one of the things that we do in our program and what we are very kind of known for and purposeful on is we want to keep as much in our world as tool agnostic as possible. Talk concepts, and then there's multiple choices for tools that fit you, not just it's got to be this way or the highway. So I think it's an important concept to take. Any take from you, Stephen, on that? I call them.
I like the concept of what we would call best in breed, right? I think that there's a pretty well recognized set of solutions out there that have a high level of security efficacy around what they do. But yeah, I would say it's not a single vendor kind of approach by any means.
Correct.
And there's different philosophies that different people take towards how they want to do their stack. So we were talking a little bit about this. We have a tech call every Monday. We were talking about this on Monday, where you may have 2 different tools that fit that same category, but one's going to be a better fit for one MSP and another one's going to be a better fit for the other, just because of the way that they work and how it fits in with the other pieces of your stack. So there's a lot of different ways that you can put these together.
Yep.
So first things first, something to get out of the way. The precious metal plans are dead. So I know this was a common thing that was going on that people were using. I was no different. We were doing, good, better, best, gold, silver, platinum, whatever you want to call it, type plans. Part of the reason that these types of situations are not advisable, that they're dead going forward, is one, they put your clients at risk. So when you give somebody, say 3 choices, here's the good, better, best, the gold, silver, platinum, what do you want to go with? 9 times out of 10, I would say that they're going with whichever one of those is the cheapest. And part of the reason that they're doing that is because you're essentially giving them your blessing that that's okay, because you provided that as an option. So they don't really understand in a lot of cases, here's what I recommend, but here's what you can kind of maybe do if you don't want to pay that much. And we have to stop giving people the option. We are the experts in this scenario. So we're the ones that need to prescribe these services.
Yeah, if you think about going to a cash scenario, any doctor that's a cash scenario. So we don't have a lot of them here in the States, but let's say dentist or an eye doctor, sometimes they're cash scenarios, or maybe the chiropractor. A lot of times you're going to look at, okay, I just want the cheapest option because you're paying out of your pocket. And we are looking, effectively, we should be looking to that expert for their advice. And when you limit it down to that, it really, really limits their choices. And I think gives them this mirage of that's still enough. And most MSPs, Ryan, we talk about this in our onboarding call in our coaching program. If I gave almost every single MSP in the world the option of there's no budget here, budget is no limit, would you put in the good, the better, or the best? What do they all say? They all say we'd put in the best.
Right.
So why don't you? Well, because the client doesn't want it, or the client doesn't want to pay enough. So part of the reason you do the risk assessment on the front side is to show them what they really need and kind of get them on the same page with you so they can make an informed decision and realize that what's going to happen if they make a lesser decision.
And that's part of the problem is in most cases, they don't have the information to make that informed decision. And it's never even occurred to them. IT is kind of, magic fairy dust to a lot of these prospects. So we need to show them what that risk is so that they can make that decision based on actual information, just like they make any other business decision that they have. And so another reason that they provide this false sense of security is because typically when you have those, good, better, best type plans, the bottom level plan may just be more of a support focused plan. And this is one of the biggest reasons that we talk about, going cybersecurity first and making sure that you're prescribing these things and helping actually manage risk, is because if you don't include that layered security model, it opens those clients up to more attack vectors than not having your services at all. So, think about that. If you're just offering support-based services and you're not doing a layered security stack for your clients, you're actually just inserting more things into their environment that have, God mode access to their computers. Just something as simple as your RMM tool can be used as a conduit. If that entity gets hacked, it can actually start pushing those things out. And that's one of the things we've seen case studies on. So anybody remember the July 4th weekend of 2021? That was a really fun weekend for people who were in cybersecurity. Had to see what was going on. And the reason that I like this as a case study is because it was a very clear-cut example. You had this whole pool of people who had things pushed, had ransomware viruses pushed to them. But there was a clear delineation between the ones that had layered security. They were able to get out. They still received that virus, but the payload wasn't able to deploy, and they had a much better Monday coming back from that holiday weekend than the ones that didn't. So, in my opinion, giving them even that option is really putting them more at risk than not having an IT provider at all. So that's why cybersecurity is really important and a crucial part of your stack. Another reason that this is an issue more from an operational standpoint is supporting multiple stacks can become a strain on your operation. So I have purposely kept my MSP lean over the years. I've been in other groups where we had other people who had similar sized businesses that had a couple of different techs. There was a little bit of a joke in one of them because I was the only one who still had my hair. And that was kind of what we talked about. I didn't have all the headaches from all the techs and all the dealing with all of that. So if you have a single stack, it's a lot easier to maintain than having to jump around and looking at all these different things, having to cross train on a bunch of different stuff. You have to have, when a ticket comes up, a tech has to figure out, okay, well, what stack is this customer on? What are the components that I need to factor in as far as troubleshooting goes? And that can take time and hurt the customer experience and things like that. You have way more variables and less consistency. It can take longer to troubleshoot. People are going to start getting upset. It's just, it makes it a lot more difficult. Whereas if you have a single stack, there's a lot of benefits that you have to running and operating your business to where you can support a lot more endpoints than you would otherwise by having to jump around and look at different things.
What's your take on one of the things that I've seen some of our members do is now they have their standard tech stack, which is like the stack is the stack is the stack. And then the things they're doing to negotiate price, because I know some price questions still come up, right? I get it. But some things that we're seeing our guys doing is, okay, their standard is their standard tech stack in a 3-year agreement. And then if the client wants it cheaper, they extend the agreement. If the client wants it cheaper, they pull out remote support. They pull out on-site support. Stack still stays because the stack is now your standard. And I think that's an important delineator from where we were in the past, because before the support was the standard. And we pull pieces out based on the client need.
Right.
Now it's the stack is there. At the very minimum, the cybersecurity stack has to be there. It has to be fully managed. And Stephen, this is something I really want to get into with you in a few minutes, the difference between a fully managed stack and security operations center. And we won't do this now, but I think it's important to talk about the fully managed stack and security operations center and the MSP that fully believes, oh, I can just spin this up on my own, because there are a lot of them out there that think that. But Ryan, what's your take on that as the avenue and leaving your stack there? Do you agree with that?
No, absolutely. It makes sense. So like, we had that a little bit more flexibility with the support side of things, which is, another reason why a whole other topic, I think co-managed is going to be the way of the future. I think we touched on that a little bit last week. But when you start talking about the cybersecurity portion of the stack, it's a totally different ballgame. The whole thing is based on layers. And if you start pulling out some of those layers, you significantly weaken the protections and identifications and all the pieces that go along with cybersecurity at that point. And you take something that is a solid piece of protection there, and you're just basically knocking bricks out of that wall, and it's going to fall over. So you can't do that. It's the stack is the stack when it comes to cybersecurity, for sure.
Yeah, and the other aspect, I think, and this is a conversation that I've had for years with different service providers, is the customer experience is a lot better whenever you've standardized on a stack that you can become very good at, right? Yeah. Not to mention the training aspects of trying to get everybody trained on different technologies within the environment. You end up having a negative impact on the customer's experience with you as a service provider if you try to be the master of what is it, the master of none kind of concept.
Of many. Try to be the master of many, but you're effectively becoming the master of none. I actually call it the Southwest Airlines model.
Yeah.
And if you guys aren't familiar with that, Southwest Airlines here in the States has thousands of planes, but they're all one plane. And so they got to train their guys once. It's effectively having one stack.
Right. And that's it's funny, and I swear Stephen didn't see my the bulk of my slides beforehand, but he kind of segued really nicely into an example. So speaking of multiple stacks, one way to do it is avoid any client that comes your way. One of the things, we have a habit of as MSPs is, anybody who's willing to come give us money, we're like, okay, yep, we'll take it. What do you want us to do for you? And that can be detrimental. It takes away from that single stack because you're allowing them to dictate what they want versus maybe what you're good at. So a good example here is kind of the difference between supporting Microsoft 365 and supporting Google Workspace. So I know a lot of people who, will take on both, and you're constantly switching gears. They're similar in what they do, but they're very, very different in how they're managed and how they're structured. So my recommendation for something like this is pick one and roll with it. So like if 365 is what you train your techs on, roll with 365. And if somebody comes in and they have a business need or are insistent on staying in the Google Workspace environment, that's cool. That just means that they're not a fit for what you're doing. And then you can do things like, partner with other MSPs in your area, that do work with Google Workspace, have that referral partnership. And it works out beneficial because if they have the same type of mentality, vice versa, when they get somebody who's coming into them with the 365 environment that doesn't want to switch to Google Workspace, they're going to send them over your way.
And I think a thing that'd be important on this with all of you, got to do a little debate with a gentleman this morning from Australia on our Facebook group, and he's like, it can't just be this way. Nobody's saying it has to be one way or the highway. Right. Common sense applies. We're just saying make sure that you have your check boxes checked off. Like, you don't have to have Office 365. They can have Google Workspace, but you have to make sure that the security pieces are checked off with it. Right. Same with, you don't have to have Highwire Networks. You can have somebody else, but it can be the checkbox has to get checked, and you can't sacrifice that. And that's the important part now. And using your brain to get there is critical, not just following a Bible that somebody else put out there.
Right.
And same goes for me. Like, we're going to give you baseline ideas, but it's kind of on you to execute it. And that's where coaching comes in, because we coach people through the trials and tribulations of their business.
Well, and the customer is expecting guidance from you on what they should be doing around that too. So it's kind of, do your job, right?
100% on that. 100%.
Yeah, and there's always going to be some flexibility too. I guess what I'm saying is, you want to try and look at keeping the core of your stack as across the board as possible, just to keep things streamlined and be able to scale properly. If you're always having to add and change and do things differently and switch gears all day long, it's going to be a lot more difficult as you scale and your business becomes more mature to balance all those things. You need a lot more headcount in order to manage those things. And to Stephen's point, it really can impact the customer experience to do that. So that brings up the question: how do we build the perfect stack? The perfect stack doesn't exist. And I think that's part of the problem here is everybody's always looking for that perfect stack. And I think when people are able to wrap their minds around the fact that there is no perfect stack, it really helps in how you can how you move forward and how you do things. So there, the analogy that I like to use when I'm talking to members is there's a bunch of different ways to make chicken soup. Everybody's got a grandmother who's got a chicken soup recipe. They're all a little bit different. At the end of the day, you're trying to make chicken soup, but the ingredients that you use to get there and the flavors and things that you have at the end of the day are going to be just a little bit different. And so when you understand that that's the case, and it gives you a little bit more flexibility, you want to look and build the stack that fits to your values and your workflows and the ways that you operate. But so long as you're doing things like, checking the boxes. So like we talked a little bit about cybersecurity frameworks last week. So chicken soup, right? You've got, your end goal is to check the boxes on this cybersecurity framework. You may use a different seasoning for some of these controls, but at the end of the day, so long as you're making chicken soup, you're in good shape. And Stephen, I wanted to get your opinion on that from a security perspective. I mean, that's something that I think you guys do really well in your managed SOC services and your security services, just in the way that you guys operate.
Yeah, I like the fact that you're using chicken soup as the analogy. My analogy is like there's only so many ways to skin a cat, and that one doesn't always go well depending on the crowd you're in. But yeah, there's really only so many ways to only so many security vendors out there that do this, that defend areas of the attack surface. So it's not an infinite amount of security vendors. While if you look at go to RSA, you'll see just thousands and thousands of security vendors. But there really are only so many ways to do things, and there are really only so many players out there from a threat, a landscape coverage perspective. So it should be something that, Ryan, you mentioned one of the things I think that is also part of the selection of the security vendors is what is the culture of the company like? Yeah. Are they channel oriented? I mean, so those are components that are also a part of the discussion, and, rating the vendor and understanding what vendor is going to fit in your stack. That's one metric I think is important, because if you've got a problem with the underlying technology and they're not going to return your call, or they're not going to be responsive to you in any way, shape, or form, I mean, that's a part of it too, right? I mean, are you too small for them to pick up the phone when you call, right? Is that how they rate you, as how big you are? That's a part of the selection process as well, I think.
Yeah, and it's really interesting, Stephen. A lot of vendors don't realize this, but MSPs don't use the term the channel. I didn't learn about that whole term, the channel, until I actually became a vendor in it. Mm-hmm. And it's something that what Stephen's talking about for a lot of you guys that are watching is, are they MSP only or MSP specific friendly? So when we say the term the channel, and I just didn't realize this didn't exist, because as I came in here, I hear all the vendors say channel, but then the MSPs are like, what is he talking about? Like, they don't understand what that is. So making sure you guys realize that the partner that you pick should be either MSP only or MSP friendly. The difference is MSP only sells to MSPs and will not sell to a competing IT director. Let's say you go in and do a co-managed deal and they won't sell to an IT director, or certain size deals. And this is kind of where I like to delineate myself, is I don't necessarily care if you're MSP only or not, but enterprise and above, they'll work with direct. I don't want to work with those guys anyway if I'm an MSP. But now the MSP has this ability to go enterprise and below. We can hit all of it, because it's the best time ever for co-managed that we've ever had, going into a company that has an IT director, going into a company. In fact, we got a lead yesterday, Ryan. I don't know if you know this. We have our members have this new service called First Time Appointments as a Service. We got a lead from a car dealership. It was directly from the car dealership's IT director that came
nice.
in. Mm-hmm. And he submitted the form for, I need help because I don't know cybersecurity.
Well, and that's the other thing that we talk about, speaking of channel only, is in those situations, that IT director probably can't get access to a lot of the tools that we use. So, they need
an MSP only side,
yep.
right?
Yep. And that's where the co-managed play, I think, is going to be huge as we start going into the next couple of years here.
Yeah, I think that channel aspect, is critically important in assessing vendors as well. What it boils down to is, do they have a model to sell directly to the customer, or are they working through partners that are addressing the customer requirement? That is actually a very, very important component, right? Because you don't want to be competing against the vendors that you're walking into your accounts, right? Like, I don't know if you're really technical enough to sell this. I'm going to go ahead and sell it directly to the customer. And many security vendors actually start out as a direct model, and then they kind of go, oh, they have an epiphany that, that customers don't want to deal with security vendors. They want to deal with trusted service providers in their region that they've built a relationship with and trust. And then they make a shift to want to be a channel company, or, work through the partner environment. But it's hard to really pull away from that cultural inception of being oriented towards selling directly to customers, right, and then working with a partner that's addressing the customer. So I think that's another important one to take into account.
I agree with that. Yeah.
The other thing there, Stephen, too, is some of these security companies who have started off like selling direct, selling enterprise, and are trying to get into the MSP and the channel space. They come in and they have no idea. Like the business models are completely different. So that's another thing when you're evaluating the vendors that you're using to make your chicken soup. What is their structure like? What are their values? Does it work with how you do business and those types of things? And those are really important questions to ask. I've had conversations with security vendors before where it's like, they clearly had a different outlook on how they wanted to provide their services. They were looking strictly at the things that they could quote unquote sell to people, as opposed to the philosophy that we have of solving for a framework. And so they were skipping out on things that the cybersecurity community was telling us you need to solve for these controls in order to accommodate things that the end customers wanted, even though those were completely contrary to what strategies they need to have from a security perspective.
Absolutely.
So you want to start asking questions about, what are the goals of your stack? Again, everybody's stack is going to be a little bit different. Do you want to make your chicken soup with a Southern flavor? Do you want to, make it a little bit more bland, a little bit more spicy? What are the goals of your stack? What are the main things that you're trying to accomplish? So some of the examples of how you can think about this are, who are your target clients? Build your stack to meet the needs of your niche. So things like, do they have specific compliance requirements? Are you dealing with customers that are, DoD contractors that need to be CMMC compliant? Are they in the medical industry and need to be compliant with HIPAA? Are you looking at, FTC safeguards is something that's coming up a lot. Are they dealing with any type of personal financial information?
Yeah, Riley, I lost you for a second there. I don't know if it was me or you.
I don't know. I just kept going. So, okay. So we've been talking a lot about FTC safeguards. So that's another good example of curating your stack to meet the needs of your target client. So like if you're really going heavy in FTC safeguards, making sure that stack that you're rolling with meets those compliance needs and solves for those issues. Another thing that I think is important, and I think is probably less of a question anymore, is are they on-prem or remote? I think with today's needs, we're seeing more need for flexibility. So, and this is something I want to shoot over to Stephen again. We had a meeting, webinar with Citricom yesterday, where they were talking about their SASE product. I know you guys have a SASE platform that you guys use as well. One of the things we were talking about with that is how flexible something like that is, because even if you've got a client right now that is working completely in the office, we've learned over the last couple of years that you need to be prepared to work from home tomorrow, just because who knows what can happen. So I think as these tools are growing and progressing and getting a lot more stable and solid, something like SASE is a really good example to where you can have that flexible work from anywhere type stack, regardless of the type of clients that you're dealing with.
Yeah, and the move towards identity-based security is an important component to SASE. It really is the core of what SASE and the different security functions within SASE represent, right? It is basically, a privilege-based access, need to know, zero trust sort of orientation that boils down to the identity of the actual users themselves. And I think what we've seen with the pandemic and the remote, millions of workers moving to remote environments, there you saw the explosion of MDR, where there's an endpoint detection and response technology on a laptop that's at a house filled with teenagers, and God knows what they're downloading from TikTok. Right. So you created a risk state for a worker, a corporate worker that needed to be secured. I think SASE is moving towards that direction, and it's important to be assessing, what is your strategy around identity-based security? And I think SASE can be a great answer for that. And there's a lot of different varieties of that. And really, to your point, Ryan, it kind of depends on, the goals of your and the target audience, right? If your customers are all really small, then bringing Netscope to them is going to maybe a little above their budget, right? So that's another component to consider.
Yep, but I mean that's one of the key cornerstones of the stack that we offer, is because of that flexibility, and so we're able to keep that stack standard, but then also flexible, so it meets the needs of multiple clients. Even more.
And I like Netscope, by the way. I hope nobody from Netscope's on the line. Great product.
It's just not a product that MSPs actively use. That's the challenge. Like, I mean, it's a different level. And it's mostly geared toward the enterprise. So most of them, I don't think I know a single MSP that's using Netscope. So I don't think you got to worry about
It's an enterprise solution. But what I think the partners on the line should be thinking about is, how do you get an enterprise grade solution that's at an SMB price point, right? Because at the end of the day, if your customers just can't spend that amount on things, then you need to get something that's addressable for them, that's going to reduce their risk, right? And having the most expensive product in the world in your stack can be an inhibitor for your addressable market there.
You guys are just setting me up with really good segues into the next section, just completely by accident. So the next up, I want to talk about tool overlap. So this is something that I hear about a lot. People complaining like, oh, all of these tools have all of these other pieces and components to them, and I just feel like I'm paying for a bunch of overlap and things that I don't need, because I want this tool, and it has these other things that you can use with it, but I don't like that one. I like this one, and that one has other overlap too. This is just kind of what happens these days. It's something that you're going to have to live with. Everybody is, a lot of these vendors have their core tool, the thing that they're really good at, the thing that they started with, and then in order to compare against other products and have that value add, they will add other sub products, I call them, that some of them are good and some of them are not. Some of them are just kind of like little value adds that maybe you use and maybe you don't. And I think we just need to be cognizant of that and understanding that use the tools as they fit. But you don't have to use all of the tools that particular provider offers as well. Some of them just end up looking good on a feature comparison chart, and they're purely for sales needs. So what you want to do when you're looking at the tools and all of the offerings that they have, choose the best feature for your needs. You can evaluate those value add features and see, but evaluate them through the lens of your other layers. So you may have something that, hey, I really want this one particular tool. We'll say email security, for example. So you're looking at email security. Do you want to use, Defender that's built into Microsoft 365 or Proofpoint or Iron Scales or Avanan. And, I've seen people who will spend weeks, if not months, trying to make this decision. And my response to that is look at your other layers. So at the end of the day, does that choice matter as much so long as you have other things in place like security awareness training, things like Threat Locker or other zero trust application management that's going to prevent people from running things accidentally if they do click on them? I mean, any one of those things can happen, and that's why layers are so important. So if you look at it through that lens, maybe what is included with Microsoft 365, it may not be as good at the end of the day as Proofpoint, but if you've got those other layers in place, maybe that's the right recipe for what you're throwing out. So don't be afraid of that tool overlap, but just make sure that you're looking at it and looking at those other lenses to see. Make sure that you're still checking those boxes with regard to a cybersecurity framework. I figured one of you guys was going to chime in on that one, so I gave a little awkward pause for that.
You did a pretty good job. I think
you nailed it, Ryan.
Ryan, when can we talk about the whole managed SOC thing? Because I think it's an important discussion.
Again, perfect segue.
Right now, I just want to make sure we talk about it and have enough time. It's an important piece.
Yeah. So, and this is an important piece on a number of different levels. So, looking at the various different types of managed solutions, I want to lean pretty heavily on Steven for this one. But the days of IT firms doing everything in-house are long gone. Like I remember I started my company 14 years ago last month. And at that point, IT companies were doing everything. So most, if you had an IT company, you were, typically offering website services, like anything technology related at the time. Most IT companies seem to offer those. It was all like one-stop kind of shopping. These days, we've really transitioned over the years to people being more specialized. So you've got, web design companies that just do web design. You've got MSPs who are providing that proactive support. So some ways that this can factor in, when we're starting to do things like security, managed SOC is a really good, probably a bread and butter example. It will cost you millions of dollars if you wanted to try and spin up your own SOC. The cost of hiring employees to perform that service alone are going to put your price points completely out of reach of your customers. On top of that, the scalability of these types of things. So that's where having a managed solution like a managed SOC partner, like Highwire Networks, for example, can help you scale. So it doesn't matter. You've got them, you're using them for your existing clients. You have a 100, 200 seat opportunity that comes down the pipe. You don't have to worry about hiring a bunch of people because you can handle that through those managed solutions. And I know Highwire, and I'll let Steven talk a little bit about that. They offer a variety of different managed solutions that kind of all tie together into their managed SOC.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where, I owned a sailboat for a period of time, right? My wife wanted to be out on the ocean. She thought it was a fantastic thing. And I thought, well, geez, I got to own it. I got to go buy a sailboat. Then I recognized how much of an investment that actually was. And I recognized how many of my friends actually had sailboats. And I came to the realization that it's better to be on a friend's sailboat than to have your own. I think a SOC is the same concept, right? It's $2 million to stand up a security operations center and about $1 million a year to run a 16-person 7x24 environment. So it's really outside the capability of many companies, even MSSPs that's their business can struggle to get the ROI on a SOC. But it is absolutely required for the type of nation state threats and the risk facing small businesses today. You just have to have an environment that you can take actions, that you have analysts, you have an ability to see the threat environment for what it is, and you have an ability to actually have a response function, built in, and you really have to have a security operations center to do that. And I think that many partners we talked to for years have really relied on the detection and response features available in EDR products to do pretty good security, right? The fact of the matter is, though, is 60% of small businesses are out of business within 6 months of a security breach. And I mean, and it's an existential threat for a small business. And without the ability to have a consistent eyes on glass view of the customer security situation and be able to correlate incidences that require a security operations center and an ability to basically, leverage a data lake for threat hunting and things like that, got to have a SOC. You just have to, right? The old days of just installing, antivirus software and checking a box are gone. And the security operations center is a critical function. But what you'll find is that there's no weakness from your perspective as a partner and a solution provider to your customer. There's no weakness to say, hey, look, we leverage a security operations center here in the U.S. that has 16 people sitting around just looking at the environment to ensure that if anything occurs, that there's a response that's taken and risk is reduced as a result. Where, to Ryan's point, you may have felt like you needed to do that in the past. Otherwise, it was a weakness in your business plan. Right. There's no weakness in your business plan working with a SOC as a service provider like Highwire Networks. Your customers are probably going to want to know where it's coming from. And you're talking about, hey, it's a 22-year-old, $50 million a year U.S. headquartered company, all on United States, within the United States borders. It's not a weakness to be able to position a SOC function that may not be your very own, right? It may be something you outsource. But that is a trend that is growing because more and more businesses are looking at like, man, we talk to big companies that are looking at trying to do SOCs and they're like, yeah, it doesn't make sense for me to do that. When do I get my return on investment on the SOC? Like in year 15, I mean, when does it make sense for you to actually try to do this yourself? And it really doesn't pencil out well to do it yourself, but you got to have it. You got to have that SOC function and you got to have those people providing that that eyes on glass function.
Couple things I have here real quick, Ryan. There's a lot of people that are going to be watching this that are like, nope, I can do it on my own. I can do it on my own cheaper. I can have a couple of guys in a room, blah, 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 right? And they have this mindset. And note, Stephen, I'm not just hypothesizing that they're going to, I hear this every single week. I have guys messaging me, and I just had we had a Facebook mandated that we put in this general chat for the Facebook group, by the way, which drives me nuts.
That's been fun.
That's been real fun. But there's guys in there that were like, okay, in fact, one of our clients, Cenas, came in there and said, hey, I'm looking at doing this. What should I have? I think you and I were going back about that.
Yep.
And you and I.
Yep.
So I pasted the stuff in there, and like 4 guys messaged me, and they're like, why would I need that sock piece? And
I didn't catch that. They
messaged me direct. So
okay.
They sent me a direct DM. Said, why would I have to do this? I have a help desk already.
Yeah.
And now part of the challenge for everybody that's watching, I know you're not security guys. I get it. I know that for a long time in MSP land, that it was like, okay, we're MSPs. The MSSPs are over there. We'll let them deal with security. Here's the challenge. And here's where we sit now. The compliance guys, the insurance companies, and what's bordering on now the law in certain areas, we got the FTC safeguards that came out that are talking about being out there. They're mandating a fully managed SOC. We also have the White House cybersecurity strategy that's out there. They're all saying, and Stephen, if I'm wrong on any of this, please correct me diligently. They are saying, if you touch IT, you're expected to do security. And in some capacity, you can't have your fingers in the chicken soup ingredients without potentially worrying about salmonella or these, like, that's the bottom line, is you have to be responsible for it. At least you have to have enough diligence to say, hey, Mr. Client, I don't do this. You need to take care of it. Yeah. Am I wrong in any of that, Stephen?
No. And then you also need to be able to support a 7x24 reality, right? That's a thing. Not only the 7x24 reality, but go find a SOC operations, find a tier 1 or a tier 2 analyst these days. They're like freaking unicorns. So being able to find people to put in that SOC, maybe you're training up, your nephew to do it or whatever. But the fact of the matter is that SOC analysts are a rare breed, and we don't create enough of them. So finding them and keeping them employed are a challenge. So for those partners that you're talking to that do stand up a SOC operator, a tier 1 or tier 2 analysts, good luck keeping them, right? I mean, LinkedIn is your worst enemy, and literally we find it's just a real challenge for our partners to actually try to staff SOC personnel. We do have some scenarios where partners will cover an 8x5 aspect and we'll cover a 7x24, but it's just, it's one of those things. It's, again, go hang out on your friend's boat. Don't try and build your own boat.
Yeah, and I just think it's so important that the MSP, IT guy, whatever you are watching this, you have to understand that in the insurance companies, this is where they're sitting. If it says on your website, we manage your IT so you can manage your business, you're responsible for IT. And IT is encompassing security now. So I can't ring that bell any louder. I'm always talking about it. And every single day, I have people coming back to me, I don't need to worry about that. Yeah, you do, because the second, and here's what I'm going to tell you, the second you have a client that gets breached, and don't sit here and tell me, that'll never happen. It's going to happen to you. The second you have a breach, compromise, whatever you want to call it, I don't care how good your relationship is, they come pointing fingers. And it's not even them as much as it is, they lose money, they file an insurance claim, the insurance claims adjusters are coming back because they want their money back. And they're looking for everybody they can to roast.
And they've got powerful attorneys, that are being paid much more than yours, probably.
Yeah. Okay. Ryan, I'll let you keep going. Stephen, thanks for your feedback on that, because it's something that I really try and hammer home.
Yeah.
But I'm not joking, every single day I get at least one message that says, I don't need to worry about security. I'm an IT guy. Okay.
Well, yeah, and you just need to have those conversations. The other thing is the economics of it. Like, why would you even bother trying to spin up your own or solve for that problem yourself when any of these managed SOC solutions is way more affordable at the end of the day?
Here's why, Ryan. I get what you're saying, but here's the why. They've started out doing the minimum because they don't know how to sell right, and they're selling and that's not ripping on you guys. They're doing a minimum because you don't necessarily. We've been in this commoditized IT world for a while. So we go down this path, and then they're like, Okay, now I got to charge, I'm charging my client $50 a seat or $50 a person, or I'm charging them piecemeal for all these little things, and it equals out to whatever. Our average that comes into our interview room is $68 a seat, all in for clients. Whatever you're doing for them, that's what our average comes in. Now you got to add a $40 a month fully managed SOC with all the other features. They don't have the cash, and they don't know how to go back and talk to the client. So instead of doing it, figuring out a way, they're just like, I'll try and figure it out. I'll skate by. I'll make it work. That's what happens.
Yeah.
And that's the why. And for everybody that's watching this, and if you can relate to any of that, please do something about it before it's too late.
Yeah, and the question to ask yourself as a service provider thinking about this is, what's my motivation to try to do this myself? Is it that I want to be a one-stop shop? I want my customers to think that I'm doing it all, or am I trying to make more margin on what I'm selling, right? And if I don't have to outsource the SOC function, then maybe I can make more margin. Well, I'm here to tell you, the amount of margin that you would gain as an uplift from that is going to pay itself back in like 15 years. So your additional 15 to 20% in margin you may acquire doing it yourself, you got to take your ROI over time, and it's just it's an expensive thing to do. So
on top of that, but stress and issues with your technicians. I mean, something as simple as a managed EDR, like taking that off of your technician's plate, is huge. Like all of those little tiny tickets that oftentimes aren't actionable, or there's nothing that needs to be done. They just need to be looked at and make sure that it's not a serious issue. Having a managed SOC can help take care of all of that stuff. The other thing I wanted to loop back around a little bit, Stephen, that you had mentioned, because this is something that I get from members all the time, is that piece about having that outsourced solution and the perception that makes you look bad because it's not a member of your team. I think it makes things look better. And this is what I tell people all the time. Don't look at it as a bad thing. You are working with somebody who specializes in this particular aspect of things. They are essentially an extension of your team. And then you may have other extensions of your team to solve for that. It's smart business. It allows you to scale properly. It's probably more efficient than cross-training a bunch of people on a bunch of different things. You're using people who are specialists in that thing. And I think that is, in my mind, in my opinion, a much better use of your resources.
Yeah, you can throw the SOC screens up in your NOC, right? We have partners that have like NOCs, and then they'll have the SOC screen up there. They have access to it. So, again, you're delivering the service to your customers. They're getting it from you as far as they know or care.
Right.
The fact that you're leveraging someone else, like to be able to deliver that and not have the cost centers associated to it, I think it's a no-brainer. But again, I don't want to oversimplify. I'm sure.
Yeah. I just try and stress how important it is to consider yourselves, at the very least. You may not be security people, but you're responsible for security. If you're managing your client's network, you are managing it all, including the threats. I don't care how much security you think you aren't. You are.
And this is a nice way to get into security too. I think a lot of the barrier for people is they've been doing support for years and they don't want to learn something new. So something like a managed security solution.
What's your logo say on your shirt, Ryan? Remember what we did?
Yep.
Sphinx Cyber. So you went from, what was your company before?
Sphinx Technology Solutions.
To Sphinx Cyber
Security.
And I think that's a really important branding change. It changed everything for you. I remember 2 years ago we did that.
Yep.
And I think it's a really important scenario. Also gives you potentially the option, you work with partners like Highwire, it gives you the option to be a security focused firm. Also potentially allows you to become, like, you could even start another division that's an incident response division that you can, like, now we're talking, what are people actually looking for now? I need help with incident response.
Yep.
I'm looking for that. Your ideal client. Like, it's perfect.
And I think you segued again in there. So
hey, I don't even know these slides.
I know you're nailing it. Both of you guys are nailing it. And so that's
I did not know that at all. That's great.
Some other managed solutions, and incident response is one that's come up quite a bit lately. So and I think we talked a little bit about it last week as well. This is something that's super specialized. The smartest IT people out there, even the ones that are security very knowledgeable with regard to security. Incident response is its own beast. If you start looking at some of these incident response firms that are out there, most of the people who are in charge of the digital forensics and the response teams are former government operatives, NSA, nation state hackers, things like that. So it's a very specialized service. And I think people get into trouble in thinking that they can do it themselves. Can you maybe get that customer who's got a ransomware incident out of it and get them back operational? Sure. A lot of us probably could do that. Are you going to be able to do it to meet the thresholds of, their insurance company and the information and the reporting that they need? If the FBI gets involved, is that going to be satisfactory to them? A lot of the issues that we've seen, me personally, with a few clients, members that we've had, the insurance companies are mandating that you have this digital forensics done. So you have to submit a report from an approved incident response firm in order for them to even evaluate your claim. So it's really important. And so this is just another really good example of a way of using a managed solution that is specialized. You don't have to have an incident response team internally. You've got the professionals that do this every day to handle that. And you're still running the project in most of these cases. You're still handling things like the cleanup once they give you the go ahead and have pulled their logs and their forensics to do the reloads. But what you really want to be careful of is not just going in there, messing with the crime scene and just wipe and reload without looking at the hows and the whys and the things that the insurance companies are going to ask for.
Ryan, I don't know if you spent any time, like we have our big Facebook group, the IT and MSP business owners group, but then there's some other ones out there, and I'm a member in those.
Yep.
They're IT guys usually. There's a couple of them that are specifically geared towards IT directors and IT guys and some of this other stuff, standalone IT people at companies. Their number still, Stephen, this is probably going to drive you nuts. Their number one solution to we have a ransom scenario or a malware scenario, wipe and reload. They don't even touch anything else, but wipe and reload is the number one solution for it still today.
Yeah, recover from backups. Good to go. Yeah.
Otherwise, destroying evidence.
Yeah, in this scenario, you can still be consultative, and you can be, one of their first calls, and it can create an opportunity for you. But you don't need to be the trigger puller here. There's a better way from your perspective to, again, be consultative and to get them out of trouble, but not be the one that's operational on going through and actually, uncovering and doing the forensic analysis of the environment.
Yep. And we skipped a little bit over because I wanted to go right to incident response, but managed help desk and NOC services is another good one. This is one that's maybe more of an optional as far as the managed solutions go, but something that can really help you streamline and scale your business. So if you were to work with a managed help desk to take maybe some of those level 1 tickets off of your tech's plate, those are the things that burn techs out fast. If you can outsource those easy things and take those off your plate so your guys can focus on the level 2, level 3 type stuff. NOC is another example of some of those. I know we've got a lot of ThreatLocker users out there. So ThreatLocker has a management option as well that's very reasonable. So that's something that can be noisy sometimes, those types of alerts. So having that type of stuff taken care of. 365 management's another big one. A lot of people are going the Microsoft 365, Azure Active Directory, Intune route. So that's another area where you can work with different firms that can be basically your in-house 365 consultants and specialize in that aspect of things. Web design and SEO, another one. Like I said, we're not typically seeing a lot of people who are still doing web design and SEO in-house when they're doing MSP services anymore. So having a good partner to work with that allows you to still offer those types of things to your clients. Voice over IP is another big one that's a really easy add-on. It's also a good gateway type service where if you get a phone call from somebody who's looking to get set up with voice over IP, partner with somebody, get that in there. That gets your foot in the door to get them to do a cybersecurity risk assessment and do some ongoing services.
Oh, and MFA too. That's one I would throw out there. It's like MFA it's included in operating systems in many scenarios, but it's so important.
Yeah.
And that's an easy one for you to bring to bear from a services perspective too. So,
for sure, absolutely. So next, I want to talk about future-proofing your stack. And Chris, you and I had a deep conversation about this a couple of months back. I think we're focusing specifically on PSAs as an example. And we were talking about the difference between, does an MSP need to look at things differently based on where they are maturity wise? Like if they're just getting started out, should they be looking at, a specific type of stack versus if they've been around for 5 years, should they be looking at another kind of stack? And so we had some opinions on that, and I took it to one of our tech calls and put it out there to the group. And what was interesting to me was some of the more mature guys, the ones who have had their businesses for a long time and are $1 million+ a year revenue and beyond. That was one of the things that they said, like going back, if they could have started with something like a ConnectWise or AutoTask as their PSA versus some of the other cheaper options, they would, because transitioning from one PSA to another can be a big pain in the butt. All of that data, most of them
so time consuming and all that.
They don't. That data doesn't transfer, so you got to choose between a bunch of manual work or losing and archiving that data. But what you really end up with is if you're charging properly for your services, and that's probably the bigger problem that MSPs starting out have, is they're not properly charging for their services. And quite frankly, probably some MSPs who've been around for a while are still not charging properly for their services. If you're charging properly for your services, you should be able to have no problem, affording something like a ConnectWise versus, some of the other cheaper options out there.
Well, and the right stack and all those other things across the board. One of the things that I definitely see, and Ryan, I get these questions pretty much daily as well. Yep. I'll have somebody, especially coming out of these calls, I'll have people shoot me a DM and hey, I'm just starting out. Here's how I want to do this. I'm going to start by offering, break fix services and all these other things. And you guys got to understand, starting out in MSP and IT right now is a totally different animal than it was when Ryan and I and Steven started. I'm sorry, but it is. You have to have a nest egg now. You have to make sure that and when I say a nest egg, you got to have some cash in the bank and build this company properly. And that starts with learning how to sell the right way. I'm sorry, but it does. I don't care if you use our service from coaching. Find somebody that can teach you how to sell at an 80% margin, the right stack with an 80% margin. Because then you can afford to put the right things in instead of having to go back. And I call this the MSP wheel of death is what I call it. Instead of having to go back and I charge too little. So now I have clients that abuse me and don't value me, but now I have to go try and sell them cybersecurity and oh crap, I don't know how to talk to them. And I'm just going around in this giant hamster wheel of death constantly. Because Ryan, you look at, Ryan coaches a lot of our clients with us as our MSP in residence. And we see a lot of people that are coming in and they're beating their heads against the wall because they're the solo or they're the head tech and they don't know how to have these conversations because they started them the wrong way. So if you're going to try and be an MSP right now, invest some cash, get a loan, do something, and do it the right way, because you have to have all these things in place. And that's not me saying invest all this money in coaching. I'm saying you have to build your stack the right way and have relationships with companies that deliver the right things, because you're responsible for them. And we're not far away from not only civil penalties, but potentially criminal penalties to willful negligent partners. Steven, any take on that?
I tell you what, one of the big values that I hear from partners, at your events is that you focus on helping them sell. In many scenarios, there's this sort of focus on the technology. Like, I got to understand the technology. Yeah. I need to understand the bits and bytes involved. You don't. What you need to be able to do is position and sell a business outcome that is involved in cybersecurity. You're not selling a product. You're selling a business outcome, and that's not simple to do. So I think it's critically important that you take the time and understand how to position and sell the security solutions that are in a service offering. And again, it's not about selling a product. Like, hey, the CrowdStrike does this, the Sentinel one does that, and this, this, that, and the other thing. It's about selling business outcomes, and it generally is a business outcome around risk reduction, right?
Yeah.
So I think what you guys are doing to teach your partners how to sell is critically important. And
think about how different that is, Steven. That conversation is what was had 5 years ago, meaning the parts and the pieces and the tools. Now we're selling risk reduction and solutions to overall problems, right?
Yep. Absolutely. Yep.
And so when I say future-proof your stack, I say it to, look at the where you expect your business to be down the road and make these choices based on where you want to be, not necessarily where you are. So a real good example of something like this, going back to the PSA example, there's a lot of good PSAs out there that are structured financially to be easier entry type solutions for lower margin, lower revenue type services. But if you look at where you want to be 5 years down the road, think about some of the numbers and KPIs that are going to be important for running your business. And unfortunately, a lot of those tools that are structured to be more financially easy to enter the workspace, they just don't have that reporting capability. So you're going to run into roadblocks when you hit those revenue milestones because you don't have the data easily at hand to make those decisions on how you want to grow your business. So you need to, understand that and make those decisions ahead of time so you don't have to constantly hit these roadblocks, spin your wheels for a while. You can just keep going and continue to scale as you go. And so kind of to sum up the perfect stack, you want to come to the terms with the fact that your stack is never going to be perfect. Like Stephen was saying, sell a solution. Your stack is going to change over time, so it doesn't matter if it's perfect right now. It won't be. But even if you were to get to a point where you felt that it was, 6 months down the road, it's not going to be, because something else is going to come out that fits your stack differently. There's going to be a different attack vector that another tool comes out and you need to add to it. So make sure that you're understanding of that. The other thing too is don't get addicted to tool demos. So we have people come through all the time that are constantly evaluating every tool that they hear a flashy sales pitch on. Make sure you schedule your research based on your contract terms. So RMM will be a nice simple example here. If you're using a particular RMM right now, and you know that RMM has a particular renewal, don't evaluate other RMMs until like 3 months before that date. Otherwise, you're just wasting your time. You're looking at things.
MSPs get very obsessed with tools, like all the time, like tinker. You guys like to tinker. It's just what it is. It's the nature of the.
We're technology people,
Right.
It's like we love the tech. The customer doesn't give a shit, though. I'm telling you right now, they want a problem solved, not a new tool.
Yeah.
It's kind of our chasing squirrels, right? We got our little ADD action going on. We're chasing those tools.
Yep, shiny bauble.
I've got a couple other slides here to wrap it up. Chris, did you want to go through a couple of these questions before?
Yeah. And I can't see who this is. I don't know if anybody can identify who this is for me on the back end. This is somebody that didn't authenticate, but this is actually, let's bounce back to this one first. So there's a couple questions from Facebook users, and all this is people that didn't authenticate with StreamYard on the back end, so we can't see their name. That's all. So any thoughts on what that per new user number should be to charge properly? Can you give an example of 3 solution offers with a price per user range? So what we recommend in our program, and you can see where the complexity comes in. And what happens with MSP guys is they're going down all these paths of confusion and all this other stuff. So what I do out of the box is I say, okay, we've surveyed, reviewed we have hundreds and hundreds of MSPs in our program, and we've kind of averaged an 80% margin, being again on an average of around $300 per seat, your currency. This is shown to be a pretty normal standard, 36-month term, $300 per seat average. That's going to give you around an 80% margin. And note, we have guys, I'm willing to share whatever you guys want to see in terms of case studies and proof and all this other stuff. Just had one that we posted this morning from Rube Syed, who is in Sydney, Australia. I'll give you guys a great example of this. I'm going to go to my phone here. This is a screenshot that I took off of Facebook this morning. Right? Literally this morning. Nice win for a client that we initially quoted a CSRA back in March 2022. 16 users. Quoted them 5,500. They said no, went somewhere else. Now they came back. He just closed them. It was evening Australia time, so he posted it at like 8 a.m. Central Time this morning. 16 per month at 351 Australian per user. 16 users, 60-month deal, $25,000 up front. So this is, and note, he had him a little higher in the beginning, and he negotiated with them to reduce the price. Stack stayed the same, negotiated to a 60-month agreement. So a 5-year deal, and got $25,000 up front. Total contract value, $362,000. That's from Rube. So that's in Australia, guys. So all day long, you can do this. We see it done with 1 user networks all the way up to, I think our largest was about a 378 user network that we've done. And as you start to mature, coming back to answer this question, as you mature, you start to have your stack prices, your stack costs, all these other things. And then if you add your 80% margin on top of that, that's where you can start to figure out exactly what your number is. But in the early stages, don't get obsessed with all of this stuff. This is why I say, just start out with a $300 number. You're going to be fine. Trust me. And Stephen, I'm going to get some take from you in a second. Let me just come back to the next comment to that. Was Chris said 80% margin, but also indicated that SOC could run as much as $40 per user. Might even be more than that. It just varies on what's included, for the record. Ryan, any take on the $40 per seat from a SOC?
That's probably high for a lot of people. I mean, it really depends on what people need. So that's where you might end up with a little bit of variation.
I've seen as much as $56 a seat.
It could go that high. I mean, if you're talking about, DOD and CMMC compliance, that could definitely go.
But that's just the SOC. So I think our average that we see is between $40 and $60 a seat cost. That's just the tools, guys. Yeah. And most MSPs are really bad at tracking time, especially your time.
Right.
But doing it this way gives you cash flow to grow. And I understand that there's this, and Stephen, I don't know if you've seen this in the MSP space, but there is definitely this stigma around, if I charge more money, then I'm not a good IT guy. Or if I charge more money, I'm not a nice person. Let's not forget, guys. I know we started IT because we're tech. I get it, myself included. But I also like to build myself a business that's profitable, that I'm not a slave to. And it's very important that you charge the right amount, or you're going to be right back there, especially when you have all this risk.
And I would push back too and say, the way I look at it, it's actually the opposite, because I think a lot of people will look at that and their assumption is that they're offering a stack similar to what they've been doing, and they're probably coming from a support-based model. We're talking about full cybersecurity stack, and I would argue if you're not offering that to your clients, if that's not what you're providing to them, you're doing them a disservice, and that to me is worse. Just to save them some money and not giving them something that in this industry that they need by seeing what's going on out there. That's the bigger disservice to me.
Yeah, I think that there's pressure out there from, I think what we're seeing in the industry now is a lot of MSP roll-ups and private equity and venture cap kind of flooding into MSP roll-ups. And what some of these environments are doing is going out and buying market share. So the pressure could be that, you're trying to compete with an organization that is buying market share. But I'm here to tell you, you get what you pay for. The customer is gonna if you're undercut by someone that's providing a crappy service, they're gonna be back to you at some point, right?
Well, you saw that with Rube right there. Like Rube, hey, so what happens in MSP land is it's like, I don't want your service because you're too expensive. Okay, let me pull some things out. Embrace your no. That's literally what I said with Rube. We've talked.
No is an okay answer. It really is.
No is a great answer.
You're segueing me again.
Rube embraced his no 100%. And then they went somewhere else and dealt with the repercussions. And now they came back and now they were like, please help us. Like, that's what it does, guys. Don't be so desperate. Okay, Ryan, I'll shut up. We got more questions coming in. Keep going.
We got a couple questions. There's just a couple slides left, but since you segued me, we talked about this earlier. The stack is the stack. When we're talking about security, you need to take a firm stand. You need to make sure that you're presenting yourself as the expert. You don't want to sacrifice your stack to make a deal because in the end, you're just ending up reducing their security and doing them a disservice, like I said. So remember, you're the expert. You dictate the stack. And that's my slide. So we got some time for questions, and then we've also got the
a couple quick things. Before we get, I'm going to come back for some Q&A. Stephen, if you got to bounce, I know we're running like 10 minutes late. If you got to bounce, go ahead. Otherwise, we're here for a little bit. We're just going to answer some questions. Please, we'd love to see you guys in Nashville. That is our event, May 16th through 18th. You can put your phone right on the screen right there and do your QR code. We're also going to be back next week, Ryan and I. Ryan, what's next week?
Next week, we're going to really get into the tools of the stack. We're going to focus on the support part of the stack next week. And then week 4, we're going to hit the security tools, stuff that everybody's really interested in.
So we got 2 more weeks with me and Ryan. Let me come back to some of these questions here. I'm going to hit this one as we go here. When you say have a nest egg for investment, what is minimum value you suggest? Okay. So here's how most MSPs start out historically. I like to be an IT guy and I want to go work. Like that's what they want to do. I don't want to. I don't want to work for somebody else. Well, it's and a lot of times the guys are coming in side jobs, break fix stuff until they have enough clients that they can break away from their career. Very difficult to do in security land now. I'm not saying it's impossible, but you got to make sure that before you talk to these clients, you can't just walk in the door anymore and just start tinkering on stuff. You better have a master service agreement that's signed ahead of time, because you touch the tech, you become responsible for the breach. Steven, am I off on that at all?
100%.
Yeah. And you guys are listening to a security expert that deals with this stuff. So please, I say this stuff all the time and I'm like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Trust me, guys, this is the reality of it. So my recommendation, can you fix your way in? Yeah, but make sure you have an MSA. Make sure you talk to them about risk. Make sure you talk to them about they're going to get breached, hacked, and do something about it. We teach you how to do that in my program, but then guys are coming back to me. They're like, well, $1,750 a month is a lot for a coaching program. How do I get there? You have to invest properly. And I'll give you a good example. I'm starting a business, another business right now. I took $100 grand and put it in a bank account. That is the kind of money that you probably should have. Maybe you can get away with not having an office. Maybe you can get away with not having any staff because you have some of these things to do, but at least 30 or 40 grand, you got to put somewhere in a bank account and do the right investments and start up the right way now. You can't just half-ass your way into an MSP career anymore.
I mean, just what you started talking about, making sure you've got tight, solid agreements to protect yourself. I mean, you're talking about 5-10 grand right off the bat.
Just to do it the right way, like right. to do your agreements the right way there's multiple good attorneys that are out there right now in this space. Robert Scott, Bradley Gross, Elizabeth Pivko. There's multiple good ones that are out there. 5 to 10 grand just for your agreement. And please do not, because every day I get this, every day, 10 times every day. Do not half-ass your way into this, because it is going to bite you. And we're past the times of I can just walk in the door and do this. At least go work for an MSP for a while if that's going to be your route. So I'd say minimum 30 grand, closer to 50 to 100. Invest in the proper tools, invest in the proper coaching, so you do the stuff the right way out of the box. That's my recommendation. Okay. Next question that we had here. I thought some charities get some type of subsidies. Some do. Charities do. Not-for-profits do. But here's the deal. It's not your job to subsidize them. They all have money. They all pay retail for a lot of things. If at any point you want to give them, and this is what actually I did a lot of nonprofits for my business, my MSP that I sold back in 2015. What we would do is charge them full price, and then we'd make a donation back to them if that's what you want to do. It's a tax write-off. You get them paying full price. It's a win. Because all they do is go get grants. And I mean, are there multiple ways to skin that cat? Yes. There you go, Stephen. That was for you.
You guys are a lot more hardcore than me. I mean, who's got the young kids here? I guess between the three of us.
Yeah. I could say a lot of other stuff. I'm not gonna say that. But are there ways to get around it? Yeah. But then you also and no, we got guys. I'm thinking of Don Simenovich and Danny Taylor. They're up in Brandon, Canada. Their number one vertical is public utilities, and I think that, what do they call them? Townships in Canada. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. They're selling these at $300 per seat all day long, and they've become like the IT provider in Manitoba. And Don closed like 5 assessments last week Wednesday.
I think it was like 3 or 4 assessments and an actual managed service.
An actual managed services deal at $300 a seat Canadian.
In the span of like 2 hours, too.
Yes. I mean, we were literally doing this and then going into our founders call and our all hands call in the afternoon. So you can do this stuff all day. Don't fall back on, I got to do a discount because they're a charity or a nonprofit.
Nonprofit doesn't mean they don't have money.
They all got money. In fact,
and they've got a lot of risk.
Had more money than most of the companies I worked with.
They're so at risk because if they have a breach, that's going to dry up their revenue because people think twice about making those donations at that point.
Yep.
So it's just
okay. Last question we had here. For that pricing question, would that number be included? We calculate it differently if I support SaaS solutions and end devices only, and security related to those SaaS tools. Sure. I mean, your mileage. Here's what I'll say on that. Your mileage may vary. Common sense applies. You got to look at what you're servicing for them. Mm-hmm. And if you're stopping ahead of cybersecurity and somebody else is handling it, fine. But you better have sign off on that. And here's the thing. If you are the only tech company that's working with them, you're responsible for security. I don't care what you think. I don't care where the line is drawn, unless they are fully signing off on their risk. And hey, if we get hacked, it's our problem, not yours. You're responsible for it. That's the way and actually, Stephen, we had a comparison from this from Cindy Phillips on our side. Cindy Phillips is our head sales coach. She often compares it to, oh, everybody's been in a fender bender, right? We all have gotten that little fender bender where we all hit everybody. And in the first 5 minutes, everybody's like, oh my God, are you okay? Are you okay? Everybody's great. And then we figure out everybody's okay. We pull over to the side, and then the cops come, and then there's like, you hit me. You hit me. What's your insurance on it? What's your insurance on it? And then they're trying to assign blame. That's exactly what's going to happen when you have a breach scenario. Everybody's going to be buddy until there's $100,000 missing, or the insurance company comes down and says, oh, hey, your IT guy should have had this handled. Why didn't he? Mr. IT guy, why didn't you have this handled? Well, you didn't want to pay for it. Show us that. Show us where we didn't want to. You never even presented it to us. If we would have known, we would have paid for that. Like,
yeah, and I assumed that you didn't have budget for it is not the answer.
Right.
Correct. Because that, and I want everyone that's sitting here thinking about it, because I know every one of us has been in that room, guys. I've been in that room so many times. I didn't have the smoking gun that you guys have right now, which is this cybersecurity landscape, the FTC safeguards, the White House cybersecurity initiatives. All this stuff is leading you towards, this is the best time ever to be a managed security provider, managed service provider, IT service provider. You have more money to be made than this industry's ever had. Stop thinking like a brokey.
Make your customer opt out of security.
Right.
Assume security should be a part of the solution set you bring to them.
And don't assume that they don't have the budget for it. Assume that they've never had this conversation, so they have no concept of what they should be directing budget-wise to this.
Yeah, and this stuff happens every single day. Stephen, the amount of heat I get on a daily basis for telling MSPs that they need to focus on security first is mind-blowing. Like, I get hate mail.
$600,000 to $800,000 per breach for a small business. That's about the average cost that a small business is going to entail if they're breached. So $600,000 to $800,000 for a small business. Now imagine if you're $1 million or a $5 million a year business and you get a $600,000 to $800,000 hit before you can get back to business. You can't not spend money on security. So I mean, I think it's now recognized small businesses are in a challenge state. They are the soft target. 60% of security breaches and attackers are going after small business. They're recognized as soft targets. So I think security's got to be an opt out, right? It's like, hey, we're going to be doing security for you. You tell me that you don't want this, and check that box there and sign next to it.
Yeah. And one thing that we do for everybody that's there, and Stephen, so, Stephen and I have only met once at our Phoenix event. We teach the MSP how to lead with cybersecurity, going back to your existing clients first, making sure you have these conversations. There's also a lot of money that's hanging out there that you never charged for. Like Stephen's saying, you can upsell them onto your cybersecurity package, not your managed SOC, your cybersecurity solution. You're solving that problem and you're upselling them just like Rube did. This much per seat. Now, he's not telling them $350 per seat or he's giving them a flat rate price that includes all of it. That's part of what we do. And it includes whatever they have, whatever they need as a solution. Okay. I can talk all day, Ryan. Actually, the three of us can sit here and shoot the shit for like 3 hours. I can tell that. We are 18 minutes over. So we'll get going.
We're still better than last week. We were like 21 minutes over.
That's correct. Well, it's important stuff. And I think it's really key that everybody that's watching, I'm very passionate. Steve, you can probably tell I'm very passionate about this because I see so many people that are just doing it the wrong way and they think they're right. So, okay. Stephen, any final parting words from you, sir?
No, I think this is fantastic. We look forward to seeing y'all in Nashville. I heard Taylor Swift might actually be there. I don't know, but
if you can make that happen, dude, I'm down with that for sure.
I think she wants to meet you, so she wants to meet you, so it can work out.
I'm sure that's the case.
You're kind of a big deal.
Yeah. Just ask me, right? Yeah. My wife was listening to Taylor Swift this morning, so she had me singing in the shower. I was singing. Ryan, great job. Any parting words from you, sir?
Nope. Just stay safe out there. And if you got any questions, want any help, please feel free to reach out. We're happy to help. That's my favorite part about this community is it's a group of MSPs that are just willing to help each other and want to see each other grow and succeed.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we'll see you guys back here next week. We got me and Ryan back next week. What's the topic again, Ryan, next week?
Talking about the support stack.
So we'll talk about the support stack, which is a lot more help desk side kind of things, right? So we'll talk about that next week, and then we'll come back on the tools a little bit more in 2 weeks. So every single Wednesday, I'm here either with tech, with sales, or with marketing, going through our live trainings for you guys. We'll see you soon. Have a great day. And Stephen Talent, thanks for being here with us. Appreciate how our networks and everything you guys do. Ryan O'Hara, great job. We'll see you guys soon. Bye-bye.